Welcome to the Secrets to Mindful Health, where we explore the hidden truths of wellness in all its forms. From physical and mental health to spirituality, join me, your host, Beth Warren, at Nourished by Beth on Instagram and TikTok, registered dietitian for over a decade, and single mom of 6, as I share my personal journey overcoming challenges towards self-love and wellness. Together with my guests, we will inspire and motivate you to prioritize your well-being and create a life of balance and fulfillment. Let's embark on a transformative journey towards a healthier, happier you. I'm glad you're here.
In this episode, Personalized Nutrition, Your Path to Better Health with Ashley Koff, RD, we're going to be talking about how to empower individuals to achieve optimal health through tailored nutrition solutions. Ashley Koff, RD, is an award-winning nutrition expert with over 20 years of experience in personalized nutrition. She's the founder of the Better Nutrition Program. We'll learn about the importance of personalized nutrition, practical tips for making informed food choices, and insights from Ashley's role as the founding nutrition director at UC Irvine's Integrative and Functional Medicine Fellowship. And you can follow her on Instagram at the Better Nutrition Program. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was so excited to have you on. I was saying how I didn't want to be insulting, but we're going to say it on here too. You're the OG, and I mean that in the most complimentary way. You followed my career when you didn't even know me, meaning I remember your name always around as really like the resource and the expert, like before it became an influencer thing. So to watch how far you've come is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, and it doesn't bother me. I feel fine with my age, but it is kind of funny, to be at this place where, we fought to get a lot of attention for nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's crazy. Now I'm fighting for people to stop thinking about nutrition. We're all like dealing with infobesity, for everyone. Yeah. So
Yeah. Right.
it's
So tell us
insane.
where you're at now with your career, because I know you're working with GLP-1s and you're working in all these new
Mm.
areas that, so if you want to take us back from where you've started and how it evolved to here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it started, for me. I think we all have our origin stories, but my origin, I am a child of the Midwest. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. Like, literally never was thinking about a career in healthcare. In fact, I was thinking about the opposite. My dad was a surgeon, and I was like, yeah, not what I want to do. I was like, I love Angela Bauer. It was this TV show called Who's the Boss, and like hunky Tony Danza was at home, and she was an ad exec, and I love selling things. So I went into advertising. I was like, that was my thing. But I was definitely a child of, it later became clear for me. But as I experienced it, I was a child who was healthy, but had this belly. And so I was like cute with a belly, like big curly hair. And then I was a fat girl. And so then it was not cute. And then you try everything dieting, and it's, I actually felt like I was such a failure at dieting because I met people, especially in college, who were like really good at eating disorders. And I was like jealous, which is horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, that's like, so like to think like, gosh, I just wish that I could actually be a good anorexic or bulimic. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
it didn't become clear to me until I hit this like rock bottom. I had this crazy experience. I'd gone through like all of like what healthcare offers you, right? They go and they check you out in all these ways, and they're like, Ashley, you're totally healthy. But I did have this on the side. I was taking antibiotics like easily in my early years, like easily 5 to 7 times a year, if not more. And it really wasn't until I had my tonsils taken out in my early 20s that I both got super skinny really fast because I got an infection, and it was like 2 months, and it was post college, and all these people were dealing with me and I was new in New York City as like this skinny person. And I was like, I don't even understand what this means. And that was not good, from a psyche standpoint. Anyway, it turned out I had digestive issues, and that led me from, at the time, I was selling sugared cereals. I was creating commercials for Kellogg's. I was telling you how good of a breakfast, extra cereal, extra sugar in your cereal was. And I was dealing with my own health issues. And so I ended up randomly, after a 7-day goat's milk cleanse that a woo-woo put me on, telling me I had a worm, meeting an integrative gastroenterologist who was like, you actually don't, but you have legit nothing helpful in your digestive system. And so for me, that whole experience, I was like, wow, like I never want others to go through this. And I also feel like what I learned in marketing was if you take a marketing approach, you can actually help people understand this. And I recognized that like I just didn't have any of the resources. I kept being told either I was healthy when I knew that I wasn't. So many people listening probably have that experience. And then I was also being told that I was fat, and it was actually, no, you're like really bloated and you're accruing fat because your digestive system, doesn't work better. And then all the recommendations for what to do, like, I mean, you name it, I did it. I mean, I was a card carrying vegan, I was macrobiotic, I would like everything under the sun. So long story, really long on that part, I ended up going back to school to become a dietitian and hated it. I found it to be the most impersonalized experience. So this was it was end of 90s, early 2000. And, through this experience, I was like, this is, you don't like tell people an 1800 calorie diet, or you don't tell people who have IBS with constipation and IBS with diarrhea, like to eat the same thing, and that kind of thing. So my career really became about how do I help you figure out what your body needs? Like that's the first place. We're these detectives. And then the second part is once you know what those needs are, you have all these choices. And today we have so many choices for how to meet those, that it became a question of like, where do those two intersect? What's deliciously doable for you? What is the role of supplementation? What are the role of medications? And kind of, and even what was very quickly on my radar when I started practicing in Los Angeles was also bariatric surgery. So like, what do we do with bariatric surgery? And that was actually my first exposure to incretin hormones. We know them today as GLP-1. And just reminding everybody, GLP-1 is an actual hormone we make in our body. It's not Ozempic. So we can talk about that. Yeah. So, that was then. And I started, it's very like, I wouldn't say lucky. I was like all things like this is exactly what I meant to be doing. And so all these different things happened at the same time. And I was in Los Angeles, working with the entertainment industry and with athletes and with individuals, a postman who lived in downtown LA and didn't have access to any food, that was better for him. How do we help you get better? And so that helped me. I started writing books. I started doing TV. I did 4 reality TV shows as the on-air dietitian. And along the way, I also created a nonprofit called Ashley Koff Approved, where I evaluated products so that people could know, like, it was very important to me to evaluate the marketing messages of those products. And I think that's one of the places today that we're the marketing of things through influencers, through practitioners, through what is actually allowed to be said on a package, and all these different ways that we're taking in marketing is so problematic because it's really replaced, education and on that part. And I've just had this wonderful career. I went to DC for about 8 years. Nothing really great happened there. So that also proved to me that I was probably better off doing things in the more of the private business space. But I also know that I love teaching this. And so I also ended up, moving into the teaching practitioner space. And the biggest piece is, we went from almost no resources around nutrition and really a very diet-focused misinformation space in the early 90s to one today that is, there is so much information that this concept of, a lot of times I say, like, the statement, knowledge is power, is actually the worst information when it comes to nutrition. Key insights about what your body needs and then being able to make choices to meet those needs, that's the power. And we actually have to stop the quote unquote edutainment or education, if you will. I think a lot of people are trying to pass nutrition tests today and not getting what they need. So that's where we are today. As I mentioned, infobesity. My work today is to help address infobesity, to help people become better vetters of their information loads, and to really use experimentation, data collection in an informed way so that you get insights about your body and then be able to understand how your body works, whether that's from genetics, whether that's epigenetics, your choices, and then make those better nutrition choices and better lifestyle choices, that kind of can't be separated from better nutrition choices.
Yeah. Right. So it sounds like, though, although the area has shifted from diet focus, I agree with you, into now maybe being too much knowledge focused. You've always been consistent in making it about and rerouting it back into what your symptoms are and what's good for your body, and then taking it from there. And that's always been consistent, just in these different realms. And now, how do you then evaluate currently people to reassess that within themselves?
Yeah, I think it's probably fourfold, and my book won't be out until next year. So depending on when people are listening to this, January of 26, I think there'll be some teasers and some other opportunities
Do you
before.
have a
So
title yet?
no,
Okay.
so
I was like, you didn't tell
yeah,
us which.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. I can tell you what it's about, but before I get to that, what I would say is that one of the key things is that we are doing assessment incorrectly. So the we've made improvements. We could look at blood sugar, we could look at cholesterol, we could look at weight, and in all of those places, we started off looking at like big aggregate numbers. Like you get on a scale, let's measure your mass, right, or your body mass index, and we know that's completely flawed. We need to know your weight composition. So your fat mass, we need to know what kind of fat mass, like yes, visceral fat mass, et cetera. Your lean body mass. We need to know about your bone mass, and where these things are allocated. So that's going to give us good directional information because your weight is a key performance indicator in your health. And it tells us within that space, I'm telling you, but you know this, but it tells us within that space where your body is, it gives us information, assessment information of whether or not your body is able to and is choosing to use resources effectively. So when we produce too much fat or excess fat, and when we produce fat in certain areas as opposed to say visceral fat, then that's giving us a good indication of what's going on. Or if we're losing muscle, that gives us a good indication of what isn't working better. Similarly, we had total cholesterol, then we got to like LDL and HDL, and now we know that so much information, the particle size, the density, like what different lipoproteins look at. I look at ApoB, ApoA, I look at lipoprotein A, depending, like we have better information in there. And with blood sugar, we went from, pricking your finger and being like, what's your blood sugar in the moment, which is so unhelpful unless you want to just know, like, how did my matcha just do?
Right. Exactly.
To having time in range with a continuous glucose monitor or, or fasting insulin, or these kinds of things. And so assessment today, we can use lab data, we can use wearables. So we could use things like the continuous glucose monitor, an Oura Ring, an Apple Watch, a step counter, those sorts of things. But we have to be careful to not use them inappropriately for data collection. One of the ones that I hate is when people are using apps that look at their total intake in the day, what percentage of carbs, what percentage of protein, what percentage. I don't care. Your body doesn't care. Your body's designed like a race car, and it wants to know, okay, did I pit stop regularly, and what was the balance like in those moments, rather than the bigger picture. So we have to look at how we have to make sure we're using that data correctly. And then our body tells us all these things, right? So I'm a perimenopausal woman. So when my hair was falling out, or my nails got really flaky, or my skin changed, or for any of us, if our oral microbiome, so if our breath changes, if under our arms, if our vaginal or our gas, like any of these things, any of those smells give us really good information, and we can look at that. And then there are things we can do where we can actually do our own experiments and check-ins. So we do things like a stress check-in to see, am I experiencing elevated stress right now? That's going to give me good information, because stress is actually totally normal and good, but elevated stress is problematic. And so, or sometimes it's great, but if it doesn't stop, it's problematic, on that piece. We do an experiment on hydration. Are you a hose or a sponge? So if you're drinking water and you're peeing it out really quickly after, you're not absorbing it. And so a lot of times we give credit for taking things in, like, oh, I ate kale and salmon. But if your digestive system isn't working better, then it doesn't matter if you ate that, if it's eliminated quickly, or if it's stuck, and it's not getting out. So we'll do things like that. I do a sweet taste bud test. We have all these different kinds of experiments and can get us data. And then one of my favorites is also the joy assessment. So we actually have you go through an assessment to tell us when you're experiencing joy in the day. And we look at what are the triggers for joy coming on and coming off. Like, I love basketball. I'm a big NBA fan. The Cavs are my team. It's the greatest year right now. And so watching the basketball game is amazing. And that was such a joy trigger for me. But some of the commercials, and I'm like having the kids cover their eyes and, et cetera. And then, afterwards I got on social media because I wanted to like say, yay Cavs or whatever. But I started seeing all the stuff that was going on with the fires. And it was so like my heart, and I ended up not getting a good night's sleep. And I was like in this great, like going to bed early, so proud of my Cavs mode. So we really can get a lot of assessment and do a lot of things without fancy tools, without lab work, et cetera on that part. But when we are using lab work and data, we need to make sure we use that data correctly. And we also need to make sure that we are checking the consequences of new choices. So, I like insurance, just we don't even need to get started, but it will typically reimburse for one vitamin D level a year. And that means if your vitamin D is at all suboptimal, you're having to pay out of pocket for every single follow-up that you should be doing.
Crazy.
Following your, trying to make improvements, right? And sometimes it can take us a couple of months to figure out why you aren't, what's the right strategy for us to improve your vitamin D. So when we do assessment, and when I'm having conversations with individuals, it's very important that we are using that data better and that we make sure that we're also budgeting for not just for coming in and testing, but being able to retest something. And then I think we're saying, because there's so many assessments that are now available for individuals to do without practitioners, you and I would love that. We would love if people were empowered and could check in on things and have good information. The problem is things are sold, and again, marketing very smartly, like a stool test that's sold where a commercial is like, oh my God, I was having, for years I had the worst digestion. And then I did this poop test and it told me I was allergic to almonds and I stopped eating almonds. And now my poop is better and I'm better than I've been. And you're like, no, you're not. Because it wasn't the almonds' fault. It was you have a digestive issue that needs repair work. And if we just start this behavior of eliminating foods, we're actually not going to be getting better. We might reduce some of the irritation, which might feel better in the moment. But if you replace those almonds with cashews, the commercial next month is going to be like, oh my gosh, I was eating cashews and my, whatever on that part. So, when we look at assessment today, it can feel overwhelming, feel really complicated, but when it doesn't need to be, and it actually shouldn't be, when you are able to say, hey, I would like some data and I'd like to figure out how I can move X forward. And it may mean that I need to work with an expert who can shorthand and also reduce inappropriate investment of my time and my money, and things like that with better.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you went into such detail, because what people don't understand is, they'll still come to me and I'll ask for labs and they'll be like, oh, you need to see that? I'm like, yeah, I need to see that. And that's just one of the 50 million things you just said.
That's right.
And really, and then like you said, people might feel overwhelmed in that, or a little bit vulnerable, like, why are you asking me all that? But I think it's empowering because it gives them, even though it seems overwhelming, everything you need to work on, I really do think that's empowering, because it's just touching on all them. It's just a touch. It's like the same reason why I feel people don't work out is because I think in their brain, they totally overemphasize what a workout means. I need at least an hour. I need to do it in the morning before 9:30, and I need to sweat. And I'm like,
and it starts with work. We only use the activity word or exercise, because anything that has the word work in it, if
I don't use workout. You're right.
Exactly.
Kids, I call it move it minutes.
Yes.
And adults, I say, I call it movement also.
Yes.
You can't. Yeah. So I find that, it's way people's brains talk about marketing, it's more like how things filter through someone's brain to see. But I think I love giving people a lot of things to work on, because it doesn't all have to be at the same time. And I call them kind of like safeguards in a way, because it, first of all, puts a lot less pressure on the food. Because everyone thinks it's only the food. I actually had a conversation with a woman I work with who's a mom and just very stressed out, overworked, typical overworked mom, literally works a job also. And she keeps going on these on and off cycles. And I don't hear from her for a month. And she was in a very down mode because she couldn't do it. She fell off the track, and then she went on a spiral down. And all I've been trying to do when I work with her is to get her into some sort of movement routine.
Yes.
And I said, it's not even only for all the benefits of movement. I said, it's too much pressure. Only the food, because it can't work out perfectly for anyone, but especially you with 5 kids who all like something different, and you work full time and you do this and that. Of course, you're going to have a moment of a night where you're going to eat your kids' noodles and then some. And you're going to feel terrible about it, because it's your only avenue you're giving yourself to work on weight, health, whatever. When you could have said, you know what, but I'm going for a walk around the block, and then refreshed and reset and woke up the next day and started again. There's a million things.
And every ad around you and every person who has a living ad is like, just try the shot. Like, as if,
Right.
like, I mean, like, oh, like, like here it comes in, like, the miracle, like, and suddenly I'm nice to my kids and I'm not choosing the noodles and I'm going for a
Right.
walk and my hair looks and you're like, oh, good
Right.
Lord. You know what I
Could we
mean?
talk
Yes.
yeah, could we talk
Yeah.
about the GLP-1s and how you
100. Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
let's because you have such great also, like, educational insight, like, expert, like,
Yeah.
evidence-based insight,
Yeah.
so I would love to know
Oh,
your
I've been
perspective.
working on it since 2005. So, like,
Wow.
when I started, so when I saw what happened to the incretin hormones with bariatric patients, I knew this because of my own experience. When I had improved my digestive health, everything about my belly got better,
Mm.
including my psychological state about my belly. So it was like, oh, you are somebody who had GLP-1, PYY, CCK. I call them our switch hormones.
Mhm.
And I'll explain that in a moment. But they're made in the lining of the digestive tract. So we insult and injure our digestive tracts lining like on the daily, like all
Yeah.
the time, every day, and we insult our vagus nerve. And a lot of that is by modern design. This wasn't happening pre-industrialization, and
Mhm.
now things like it's great that there's Tylenol and Advil, but they insult the lining of our digestive tract. It was great that
Mhm.
there were antibiotics to actually help me with an infection, but they screwed up my digestive tract. It's great that I can super stress myself out as I'm training to climb a mountain, but it is stress, and then there's all the stress of, and the vagus nerve is like, a highway that we're asking it to do like the traffic of a 7-lane highway, and we're asking it to do it with 3 lanes. Like there's
Mm.
just so much that's problematic. We all know that. I don't have to go online. But so the interesting thing is, and I think it's kind of cool, and I'm just a total geek, but they discovered, so they were looking at medications, and basically going down this path with diabetes and saying like, okay, we've looked at insulin and we've pretty much tried every way that we can to help support people have better insulin response. Now,
Mhm.
but we know that it's that your intake is going to impact, right, your insulin response. And how do we play with this intake? So they had looked at these hormones, and they realized they're designed like motion detectors. So super fast, like motion happens and a signal goes off. That's all that a motion detector is supposed to do. And it's supposed to let you know, hey, you need to now decide how you want to respond to that signal. So is it
Mm.
that somebody is in front of your door? Okay, do you want to open your door? Is it someone's in front of your door? That's scary. I need to call the police. Is it someone like it's a motion detector. Like it's letting us know on that part, right? So these are motion detectors, which means these hormones turn on for like somewhere around like 2 to 5 minutes. And they're supposed to go to all these different receptor sites throughout the body, but at
Mhm.
least throughout the digestive tract, and hit those receptor sites and then send messages through the vagus nerve and get up to the brain so that the brain can say, okay, you've gotten food. Cool. You don't need anything more. You're going to be satisfied. And over here, here's what's coming. And oh, by the way, do this over here, and
Mm.
all of these other things. Problem. Modern day, we need a force field, not a motion detector. That's
Mm.
it. Like we need, like, imagine, and I like to say this, like, imagine if you were walking into a grocery store. We already say don't go into the grocery store hungry,
Yeah,
but
my grandma said that.
imagine if you went into the grocery store and you were able to put on glasses, and the glasses took away all the marketing messages and they told you what was actually the truth about the product. That's the kind of force field. I mean, I remember somebody on one of my reality TV shows crying, and I started crying with her in the salad dressing aisle, and she's like, that high fructose corn syrup, it's in here, but it says it's a vinaigrette. And I was like, I
Mm.
know. And I was like, this is why we're going to just do olive oil and vinegar at home, and we're going to put spices in there.
Yeah.
It's so annoying, right? So
Mhm.
just imagine if that was your force field. Imagine if your force field when you were scrolling through social media could be like, that person's selling you BS, or that person is actually
Mm.
just selling you this.
Or don't
This
buy
is the
that.
don't buy this. This is the information that's helpful for you, right? So we need this force field. So what was interesting was they started to look at and said, okay, so the reason these are motion detectors, there's this enzyme that shuts them off after about 2 to 5 minutes. So
Mm.
they went and they found one of the only, if only, I think there might be an insect that's prehistoric, but the only example of a prehistoric animal or reptile today, the Gila monster. And because it's prehistoric, that means billions of years ago or millions of years ago, it was designed in a way where food access was going to be a real problem. So it was designed so that if it did not encounter food for 30 days, it could literally eat the fat out of its tail. Like the body would start to take its fat and it would burn it. Imagine if we were designed like that. Imagine if we were, if like suddenly we don't like have to worry about, is there access to food? We could just burn the fat from our tails or from our bellies or from wherever they are. And when they found that this venom, that they could take this venom and they could turn it into something, and they're like, okay, so now we're going to use it and you're going to inject it daily. Well, nobody wanted to inject themselves daily, but the people who did inject themselves daily, they saw results with their diabetes, but something else happened. Suddenly the receptor sites in the body were getting in the brain, and they were like, I'm not even like, they were the mom that was like, I'm not even thinking about my kids' noodles. I am actually going to just be like, I'm done and I'm good. And you know what? I'm going to wake up in the morning and I'm not going to be throughout my day thinking about food all the time. I'm going to think about, I might forget to think about food, which could be a problem, but I'm definitely going to think about food like when I am either experiencing hunger, or I'm going to start to teach myself that every 3 hours this is going to happen. And so the shot was invented, and then somebody figured out how to expand its duration from a single day to about 7 days, depending on dosage and the individual. And it's amazing. And I think it's very important to not talk about it as a medication, because these are hormones. I call them, they are a peptide hormone. It's a hormone replacement therapy. So if you don't have insulin, we give our body insulin. If you don't have thyroid, we give our body synthetic thyroid. If we don't have estrogen, we give our body estrogen. So now we're giving our body GLP-1, a synthetic form, but it is not the same as what's made in our body. It doesn't go away in 2 to 5 minutes. It stays on 24/7. So that's going to cause real changes. Some of those changes are amazing. It's going to get to receptor sites that previously didn't get gotten to at all, like in the heart muscle, in the liver, in the kidneys. It's optimizing hydration. It's reducing inflammation. It's helping to repair the lining of the digestive tract. It's going into the brain and doing cool things. However, it's staying on and not turning off. So it means heart rate variability. It means we're staying in a metabolically, like a more, like we've seen people have more of a racing heart. We've seen it, where you're staying more metabolically active. It's affecting sleep. So you may not be sleeping as well. Your heart rate variability may be going down. Now you may be sleeping better if it's addressing your sleep apnea. So there might be like a little bit catch-22.
Trade-off.
And it's also delaying gastric emptying.
Yes.
Now, if I had issues with delaying gastric emptying, or I had issues, maybe I'm on a proton pump inhibitor and I'm suppressing the amount of acid, and now I'm supposed to be eating protein, but protein requires stomach acid to be broken down, and now I'm delaying gastric emptying, which delays even more of the stomach acid production. I might have a burger go undigested in my belly for a day or two, and I might not be pooping for 3 or 4, and I might have horrible hemorrhoids, and I might have bad smells and these kinds of things, but I don't care because I'm losing weight. Well, we've created that environment, and and I wouldn't say that the person doesn't care. The person feels it, but they're like, wow, I also have literally never felt all these other good feelings. So it's kind of working in a way, for some people, as almost an antidepressant. It's working as an anti-inflammatory. It's doing all of these great things. What it did for me was it allowed me to come forward and write my coming up book, which is about the fact that it has exposed GLP-1 dysfunction, GLP-1 CCK-PYY. We have that dysfunction either in the production or in the timing. So we might have true dysfunction. We may have a delay. We might also, our choices might be suppressing, and it might be working, but we're not, having it get there. And so the thesis of my book is, like, no matter where you are on this continuum, we all need to optimize our own system for what we call endogenous, for our own production. Not because that will do what the shot does, but that will do, if we are on the shot, that's going to be what helps us reap all the health benefits of the shot and reduce side effects. And it's also going to help us at the time period that we decide to reduce or come off of the shot. But so it's going to help us just be more successful there. And for those that don't use the shot, it's going to help us get those same benefits, those same optimizations that are foundational to optimizing our weight health. And so this whole conversation about the shot, to me, is like, it's been so misappropriated. They're the same people, like, so one, there are a lot of people that just hate it if suddenly a fat person loses weight in their mind. Like, they're just like, because they felt better than you when you were fat and they weren't, like, and that's just the way that, like, unfortunately some people exist. I think even deeper than that, there are people that feel like, well, I might not be obese, I might not be diabetic, but I'm struggling with the 10 or the 15 pounds, that of weight that, for me personally, had meds came on. That was an issue for me. Like I went through a really traumatic personal year. I was going through perimenopause. I then decided I was very proud of myself, mental health work. I'd stopped drinking. I was doing all sorts of stuff, but I trained to climb a mountain, and the training was endurance. So it was a lot of zone 2, low level, on that part. You needed a lot of carbohydrate, and they had me, like, the recommendations were to like kind of stop a lot of the strength training and HIIT workouts that I was doing, because I really, like, I needed 3-4 hour, hiking, whatever. I gained a good amount of weight. I probably had 15 pounds of fat. And did my endurance event, had these great outcomes, these amazing moments for me, like perimenopause. I was like, wow, like I've been wearing my hair straight for 30 years. My hair's curly now. I was like,
I love that.
I got it here. I was like, it's all great. And I came off that mountain and I was like, I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm going to try to do what I know should be helping my digestive system and all of these other things. And then I decided to go on a low dose of a semaglutide. And I was like, okay, like this has changed the game for me. And for me personally, it was about a 12-week intervention that was, and I stayed at a very low dose, and I was using other supplementation. I used something called Amerisate, which is known as CaloCurb. And it really, like, it was the thing that helped me move forward. And now that I've been off that, I'm still losing weight. But I'm also training for another mountain. And so
that's so exciting.
I'm really strong and I have a lot of muscle, and I'm trying to build more muscle. And so I've been able through that process to build muscle and to lose fat. And to do this while my 51-year-old perimenopausal, like, still getting my period regularly, body is like, all these other things. So when that coming through on that part, I was like, I hadn't felt as mentally bad and disempowered in my life. It took me back to when I was in my early 20s. And yet I'm this like nationally like renowned nutritionist also who is like, what do I do on this part? And I looked at the medication and I was like, wait a second, this is hormone therapy. And it was amazing to me because for the first time in my life, all my labs were bad. Like, I've never had a bad cholesterol lab. I've never had like all this other stuff. And I looked at my labs and I was like, I literally said to somebody, I was like, I wonder if these are somebody else's labs.
Right.
And over the course of 3 months, I was able to correct all of my labs, to like be back to that space. So why do I tell, like, personal story, take it, whatever you want on that part. But for anyone who's listening, the point isn't whether or not you need the shot. The point is, how do we as an individual help you get where you need to go? So I've been working with individuals who had bariatric surgery and felt like bariatric surgery failures. And then I was like, okay, let's work with the shot and your bariatric surgery, and let's work at this. But in all of those cases, we still had to repair digestion. We still had to optimize detoxification. Hydration is a part of digestion because it's a part of the absorption, how we absorb nutrients. So we have to optimize that there. We have to look at inflammation. We have to do all of that. And so when we look at this whole system, there is actually an approach that is very clear. It starts with a 30-day jump start, and then it goes in, however many months, it's going to take us to get you to where your sort of optimal health goals are. But it also does us something that I think is really powerful in this space, and that's permission to live your life. And for some people who use a shot, it is permission to lose their life. And I will tell you, just one of the stories I'm the most proud of is not my own personal. My personal journey is like, to be written. And to be honest, I really wanted to try semaglutide so that I could also, I used a compounding version and whatever, but I wanted to try it. So as I was writing my book, I could say like, I've tried this. Here's the experiences, right? 2 days of constipation. I was like, never again. Like, how do you hack that? Like all of those things. But I have worked with a mom and her daughter, and the mom had her own results, and she's a 50-something mom. And she was like, she, called me one night. It was post a concert, and she was crying, and she was just like, and we're the same age. So she had gone to this musician that I knew, and she's like, this is, she's like, number one, I don't ever let them take this medication away. I said, hey, first of all, like, whatever happens in this space, just know we've figured out what your body needs, and we're going to be able to get your body what it needs. So like, we've got a plan here, and she's like, and I'm just so worried about my 20-year-old daughter because she's gone down this path, and I don't want her to live 20 to 50 the way that I did. She's like, I feel like I was in an abusive relationship with my body and my food and my health for 30 years, And so we had this whole conversation, and her daughter is an athlete. Her daughter is like this amazing, like just a brilliant woman, like, she's going to do amazing things. in the world. And so we started working together, and, we had, we made the decision for her to start, and she stayed on a very low dose, and she had some underlying digestive issues. So we had to work on those. And she's, in the course of her senior year, she's taken off 60 pounds, and she is so healthy. And that's the thing, and she's learning, she's like, I just was so screwed up about nutrition. And I'm like, I can't even imagine and I was like, oh, I remember being 20 and how screwed up I was. And I can't even imagine being 20 today with all the access to this information, how screwed up. And I was like, this is and she's like, now I feel like we can, moving forward, I'm learning how to work with my body. And I was like, I can't think of anything. So this is generational change. And again, if people want to, if somebody feels like the medication isn't a good thing for them, by all means, I have no issue on that part. Same thing if you don't want to take estrogen, or maybe because of your health, you can't use that. We have other things that we can do. But, I think it's just this, let's not judge the medication. And then on the flip side, it's being used so inappropriately.
Right.
And you'll notice I talk about semaglutide, which is just the GLP-1 agonist. Now, because of the popularity, there's dual agonists. So there's GLP-1 GIP, which is tirzepatide and Mounjaro and some of the others. And people are like, faster weight loss, more weight loss, and all this stuff. And we're like, and maybe there's a benefit for that. But in a lot of cases, I get very nervous when we turn off two sets of hormone responses. And then they're up to, in the research, there are 124 patents pending, and research studies being done to try to bring forward other agonists. So this marketplace is just going to get, it's like when statins first came on the market. It's going to get, flooded and overwhelmed. So what I would also say is, it is so problematic for use if it is being used incorrectly.
Right.
And I think that's to me, that there's, all the opportunity and benefit of something. And for my practitioner colleagues that are like, this is so wrong and we should just focus on root cause medicine and all this stuff, great, you focus on that. But if somebody comes to you and this is what they're interested in, please do me the favor of just sending them over to somebody else, rather than making them feel badly about, their interest or their pursuit. Because I think people can't be objective right now. I think they feel like they feels a lot like the vaccine conversation. You need to take a global stance as opposed to what's better for the individual.
It's better for the individual, and look at everything isolated a bit. I think one thing that I think is a major takeaway from what you said is that on a basic hormonal level, if you take just the GLP-1 or the Ozempic, use it as a tool, and then you have to, sounds like you're saying you have to align that with lifestyle, diet, work on it with it. You need to, first of all, for the effects. And this is why people express, oh, Ozempic didn't work for me, or I only lost 2 pounds, and it's because you're supposed to and meant to work on what you've always needed to. And then as you wean, even more so, because, that's when you're saying you can actually teach your body how to be more sensitive to
and
these
shame
hormones.
on these physicians, and I have publicly shamed you. Shame on a physician who puts somebody and allows somebody to go on. Now, if somebody decides to go on their own, that's fine, but puts them on or allows them to go while they're on a PPI, unless you have a plan for, and PPI is a proton pump inhibitor. But if you're taking Nexium, if you're taking, somebody said, oh, well, is Prilosec better? I was like, no. I was like, but also you may need those medications. We just have to have a plan for it, and shame on the practitioners that just say all the great things about this medication and are saying it to other practitioners who have concerns, who have cautions, again, just like the vaccine, how can we have an informed and an open conversation? Shame on the practitioners that say that these medications translate to muscle loss. No, if your patients are losing muscle on this, you're not working with them effectively.
Exactly. I stopped that right away.
Oh my God, it's so
it's not necessary.
On that part. And shame on the ones that are saying, in this part, that you have to stay on it forever. It didn't get published, but I wrote a pretty scathing rebuttal to the New York Times. I was like, hey, did you ever think of interviewing somebody who maybe has been working with and has helped people come off of these medications successfully? No, you're just saying hey, the way that these work, if you come off of it, your body isn't going to do this. Of course, that's the case with every medication. Every medication, especially those that override how the body functions. Look, if you quit smoking, you're going to be constipated. If you don't figure out, or if you stop drinking coffee, you may have a headache. anything that overrides the system, we just need to come in and say, hey,
Right.
what's our plan for this?
Right.
And then to test it out and see, everything is individualized. I was on with a doctor this morning. We were talking about a plan for her patient coming off of this. And we said, well, let's look at this, because what we're noticing, and it'll be interesting to do research, on it over time, is that people, it's really related to cytochrome P450, or potentially related. And depending on how your body, your liver, how your body produces these, and looks at that, and what other medications you're on, other things, it's going to be very individual about what messaging your brain gets, and how
Yeah.
you're, et cetera. So
that's
so
actually what I wanted to end with, but I guess you're
Yeah.
going to say it's very individualized. But how does this all manifest? Or if you even take your example, if you give
Yeah.
people a general guide of like what they're supposed to focus on or eat, and
Yeah.
then about getting off of it too, even if it's in a general sense.
Yeah. Well, the general sense is get personalized help. So like that's going to be the answer on that part.
Yeah.
But the other part of it is definitely have a plan to evaluate. So if people say you're going to go off of this and you're going to gain all your weight back, and they give an example of my patient that went off of this, had lost 40 pounds and she gained 60, I always come back, I'm like, where were you at 5 pounds? Like, where were you? Like, this is your fault. So track it. So you need to, like, this is where, and if you don't have I use an InBody H30 at home, and it's like $300 maybe. And I'm not knocking, like $300 is a lot. If you don't have that, then you test your waistline, use your waist to hip circumference, make sure it's not going to tell us as much about body fat, but we can also see like, when we're lifting weights, if suddenly you can't lift as strong of a weights, or if you're more tired, or, we might have symptoms that you're actually losing muscle, if things are saggier, that kind of thing. So for me, it was really about just testing and like actually, and trusting, and seeing. And then something else is really important. The other part is having a plan for when life just, on that part. So I had somebody who's been off her medication, who we weaned off and has been off the medication for about 6 months. And she's going through the most brutal divorce. And it was an overnight situation. And she was, everything. It's her finances, it's her kids, it's her, all of this pulled out from under her. And she was like, we were talking, and she's like, she was embarrassed. She's like, Ashley, I did what you said. I've been on the scale. She's like, and I'm so embarrassed to tell you, it's not even 5 pounds. I waited to call you. It's 7 pounds. And I was like, okay, first of all, like, never be embarrassed. And second of all, I'm so glad you called. And I said, we had this whole conversation. We cried on the phone together. We talked about it. And I said, you know what? Just like, I feel like you need some support. And like, can we just, like, how would you feel? I was like, can we just, and she was like, literally, she has told me that she's like, I think that call and that choice, because I was like, it was your call and your choice. I don't own this. She's like, I think it saved my life. And I was like, I agree with you on that part. And I was like, and that's the job of the practitioner-patient relationship. It's also what's going to be missing if you're buying it online and, doing some check-in with somebody who just sees you and your numbers, right? Who doesn't, look at the other part. So I would say there's that piece. And then I think the other part is, I love what you said in the beginning about like, these are like your guardrails, or these are like, have in place, like, these are the things that I know when I do them, they tend to translate to my better results. So when I pit stop regularly in the day, when I start my day with maybe making sure that I'm getting in, at least 15 grams of protein, up to 30 grams, and I'm not like overdoing it in added sugar and, whatever those things. And I usually say there's about like 5 to 10 in there, some are lifestyle, some are nutrition. So if those are the things that have been working, then I need to make sure that I am actually seeing that I'm able to continue to do those when I'm coming down on medication. And if not, and usually I use CaloCurb a lot of times with my patients to like start to, on that piece. If not, or if digestion is changing, or if I'm just noticing certain things, then let's just keep you at a lower dose, like, and no shame. Like, let's just, like, if it takes us 5 years to get you to where you're off of it, unless we have an urgency. So in a couple of cases, I've had an urgency. I had somebody who had a cancer diagnosis and we needed to have them off the medication. I had somebody else who, for great reasons, she got pregnant. It's like, okay, total surprise. Right. But not, because I think she got so healthy that like, here's this, it had been battling fertility. And so I think what we have to look at in this part is, everybody wants a non-personal, like you know that you're a personal and you're like, okay, but in general, what could we do? And it's like, actually, that's the problem, right? So I would just,
it still comes back to the personalized. And this is what you shared about the practitioners not shaming or yelling. And that's what people know me for. People, not enough. but there are people who come to me because they feel safe to say, look, I'm on. A client came back to me and she said, look, I'm going to tell you, I've been on it, and she's nervous. And I said, okay, so like here's and she's dealing with constipation, and I said, let's deal with those. And I said, you're different. I said, you're not that. I'm not judging you. You always had a great headspace. Like, let's use that. You know, she has her workouts going. Like, it's something that people have to feel comfortable to get help, because like you said, you could catch the 5, you could catch, there's signs, there's things, even if it's a scale sign, go get expert, but it has to be the experts that welcome it and know how to help.
Who's gonna, and people have said, like, what about body positivity? I was like, I mean, I've never felt, or what about intuitive eating? I was like, you can't be intuitive if your gut is all effed up, like all of that.
No, you could totally practice intuition. That's why I don't call it intuitive eating. I'm very not into labels, but the whole point I work with Ozempic is you work on intuition, or you practice intuition.
Have that experience. It can be, in the same way we have training wheels with like food delivery, or, with all the other things. And it's funny that you bring that up, because I had a colleague reach out to me who, she was like, I can't believe that on our colleague, like I give a webinar for colleagues. She's like, I can't believe you shared your story. She's like, you are so brave. And I said, well, first of all, thank you. I was like, maybe I should think about like how, whatever. And she said, would you consider, like, she's like, I know there are a lot of us that are like kind of thought about using it or using it, but we don't want to talk about it because we think it's going to make people feel like we can't do our jobs. And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, so I'm like happy. I was like, I don't think I have the time right now to delete a support group. So I'm probably not going to do that. I was like, but I'm real blunt. And I was like, and I also feel like I could have been on here and shared every story that I shared with you all. And I don't need to share my story. Like, and so that part of it is like, you don't ever have to feel like that you have to be on display. And quite honestly, it took me time. I wanted to know, that I could be like off and like feel it like and maintaining my results and go through like crazy shit in my life, all of that stuff. And it's like, okay, like, here, I can tell you what, is getting thrown at me on that part. So I think that's really important too, to really be able to make those decisions. But for any of our fellow practitioners listening, like, you never have to share. Influencers feel like influencers only have their own story. And by the way, that's impactful. Like, you can totally share your own story. As practitioners, we have all these patient stories that we can share. You don't have to feel like
right. Right. Oh, I love that message. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on this. I let us go over because it was so insightful from just, I don't know, it's one of the most insightful GLP-1 conversations I've ever had. And I have people talk about it all the time, but we'll talk about constipation or the symptoms, but you just gave so much clarity, I would say, and in a way that felt very balanced. So I really loved that.
I'm glad we got there, because we didn't get there in the first, like, it may be a two-parter. We didn't get there at the start of the conversation.
I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes. Or I'll definitely redo the clips as more. But thank you so much for joining us. We can follow you at the Better Nutrition.
The Better Nutrition
program on Instagram. Okay,
thanks. Great to connect with you.
You too.
Don't forget to hit subscribe or follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Nourished by Beth, or listen on Spotify at the Secrets to Mindful Health podcast.